Hello everyone, today we are going to draw this adorable strawberry cake. I will guide you step by step so you can follow along and finish with a cute illustration you will be proud of. So grab your iPad, get comfy, and let's start. First, on Procreate's gallery interface, tap the plus sign in the top right to create a new canvas. We are going to make a custom size canvas. I recommend 2000 by 2000 pixels. Just make sure your unit is set to pixels and set the DPI to 300. Then tap the little check mark to confirm and it will take you into the drawing interface. Next, let's import my step-by-step reference image into Procreate. To import it, tap the little wrench icon, and I recommend downloading the image to your photo album first. Then just tap insert a photo and you can bring my step-by-step reference image straight into Procreate. Then just move the imported image up a little bit so we will have enough space underneath to draw. Now we are going to draw the line art first. To make this easier, I recommend using Procreate's reference window. Tap the little wrench icon, go to Canvas, turn on Reference, and choose Canvas. Then you can load my line art reference into that pop-up window. For sketching brushes, I like to use my own pencil brush. If you don't have my brush pack, you can go ahead and use Procreate's built-in 6B pencil brush. Before we start, let's quickly break down the sketch. It's actually pretty simple. The cake is basically like a little triangular block sitting on top of an oval plate. And for the fork, you can just use one straight line first to place it and get the size right. Okay, I accidentally have been painting the basic rough sketch on the same layer, so we can just use the selection tool, use rectangle, select this area, and then use 3 fingers, cut and paste, so that we moved our rough sketch onto a new layer. And then we can just lower the opacity for this rough sketch layer, create a new layer for the clean line art. Then based on those guidelines, we will draw the clean detailed line art. Something to notice here is that when I'm drawing these lines, I'm not just copying them mindlessly, I'm thinking while I draw. For example, with the 2 slanted sides of the cake, I was comparing them to an imaginary vertical straight line and asked myself, okay, what angle is this really? And honestly, it's only slightly tilted, maybe like 10 to 15 degrees. And for the C curve over here, I looked at the start point and the end point, and if I imagine a straight line connecting those 2 points, that line is roughly at a 45-degree angle. So doing those little checks while we draw is how we train our observation skills. And later on, when we start drawing from real life or from photos, this is what helps you control your lines. So keep those little checks in mind, and let's continue. Now we're going to draw the oval plate. If you feel like your curve doesn't really match the reference one-to-one, that's totally fine. We can just go ahead to use, in the adjustments, you will find liquify. We can just use this tool to tweak it. You see? I can just push it into the shape I want. Okay, go back to our brush tool. And then the fork. I'm realizing my fork is a bit too long, so I'm going to just use freehand. One more time, freehand. I'm just gonna select this area and then use the transform tool to adjust it. Freeform. That's roughly, maybe even a bit smaller. Okay. Okay, now that the line art is mostly finished, I'm just gonna do a quick check to make sure it matches the reference as closely as possible. For example, I see the gap between the bottom of my cake and the plate is, I would say, a bit too wide. So again, we can just use Procreate's tool to tweak and fix that. I'm gonna select the cake and then just drag it down a bit. Freeform. Okay. And then liquify just to make it more curved. Okay. Alright, now I think this is about 80 to 90% similar to the reference now, so I'm happy with it, and we can move on to the next step. First, I'm going to turn off our rough sketch layer, and then for the line art layer, we are going to lower the opacity to around 10%, and then set its blend mode to multiply. Then create a new layer, drag it under the line arts, and we will start painting the colors on this new layer. For coloring, you can keep using Procreate's built-in 6B pencil brush. If you have my brush set, you can use my color pencil brush. For the color, we are just going to sample the blue directly from the canvas. Make sure we are painting on the correct layer. Then, following the line art we already drew, just fill in the blue cake shape wherever it belongs. The size of my brush, I'm now using around 20%, I think. I will trace along the line art first and get the edges in. Then I will bump up the brush size to fill in the middle faster and cover all the empty spaces. However, there's a quicker way to lay down the base colors. It's called color drop in Procreate. Just drag this color into the shape after you drop it in. Keep your pencil down and slide left or right to adjust the threshold until the colors fills the area exactly the way you want. Now if we turn the line art off for a second, you can really see the difference. On the left is the color I filled in with pencil brush, and on the right is the color drop version. You can see color drop gives you a super solid, perfectly filled shape, no little white gaps at all. That's why I personally don't use it that much, because I like my digital drawings to still feel a bit hand-drawn. So I usually prefer a pencil textured brush to lay down my colors. But if you're trying to work faster, color drop is totally fine. Just remember to toggle your line art off and check for any unwanted white edges. Then you can quickly paint over them by hand. Alright, next let's create a new layer, and we are going to paint that creamy yellow part of the cake. I'm going to just sample this color again, turn my line art back on, and then lay this color down in the area where it belongs. This time I'm going to use my usual method because I really enjoy the coloring part. I find it really relaxing. I'll just adjust my brush to a size that feels right, because if it's too small, it will take forever for you to lay down the color. So just find a comfortable size. And then I will rotate the canvas as I go and just lay the color down bit by bit. Then same steps again, create a new layer. Let's sample the green from the strawberry leaves and then paint the leaf shapes in. Alright, and then a new layer again. Let's sample this pink strawberry color. You will notice every time I lay down a base color, I start by tracing the edges along the line art first, and once the outline is in, you can relax and just fill in the middle. Alright, next we will make another new layer and paint in the gray for the plate and the fork. Again, I'm just tracing the line art. And then again create a new layer. Use the same yellow we used earlier and paint the handle part for the fork. Okay, so our base colors are done, and at this point don't forget to do a quick check, turn off the line art layer and look at the shapes on their own. It's a really good moment to adjust anything that feels off. For example, if we compare it to my original version, I can see that my fork handle is a little bit too long, so I'm going to shorten it, this layer, and then it actually can be tilted a little bit, so, and then make it just a bit shorter. Okay, maybe let's adjust it with liquify. Okay. And then I want the strawberry to be a bit rounder. So again, I'm just gonna go ahead to use the liquify tool. And I think the plate could be a little flatter, so I'm gonna go ahead to this layer. I want it to be more of a squished oval, so like that. Alright, now that the shapes look good, we can move on to step 3. Step 3 is basically the lighting stage, and to be honest, I'm not always super strict about realistic lighting and shadow here. The main goal is to just make the colors look richer and more interesting, but we will do it in a way that still feels like light. So in this illustration, I'm imagining the light coming from both the left and the right. That is why in my original you will see the blue cake has a lighter blue added on both sides, and the strawberry is really obvious too. There's a brighter yellow sitting on the lower left area. So now we are going to add those lighter, brighter tones on top of our base colors to bring the whole drawing to life. So how do we do that? I'm going to show you. We are going to alpha lock all our base color layers. We can do that by just using 2 fingers, swipe right on all our base color layers. Alpha lock basically means we can only paint inside the shapes we've already filled, so we won't accidentally color outside the edges. Now let's switch brushes. For this step, I like to use my texture brushes to create those soft color variations. In my original artwork, I used this one called hand-drawn texture brush. If you don't have my brush pack, no worries. Try a few brushes in Procreate's built-in library, especially under painting and artistic. You can get a really similar effect with those two. So we can just go ahead and sample those brighter blue color, and then make sure we are on this layer. When using texture brushes, try not to make the brush size too small. For example, on this blue cake area, I want a brush that's big enough to cover most of the section in one stroke. So you see now it's too small, so we would want it to be maybe around 16, 17. And then the bright colors go here and here, also on top. And while you're painting, if you feel like the color you sampled isn't bright enough, you can just go into the color panel and nudge the brightness a little more toward white so the highlight pops more. See? And then I like to sample the color in the middle to sort of smoothen the transition. Try to match the colors in my original as closely as you can. For example, up here there's a slightly purple toned color. This kind of subtle shift is what really makes a palette feel rich. So we will sample that tone and paint it in. And then let's go ahead to the strawberry layer. The same thing, we're going to sample the bright yellowish color here. And then for the strawberry, clearly this brush size will be too big. Then we can just make a bit smaller. So like this big would be appropriate, I would say. And then just paint the bright pink color in. And then on the top it has those like more saturated pink color, and then let's add that in. See, once we add a lighter color to the lid area and a deeper color to the shaded side, the strawberry immediately starts to feel like it's catching the lights. And then let's move on to this layer. What I did was that I added a darker color to both sides, and then the middle is a bit brighter. The brush size needs to go a bit bigger. And then always sample the color in the middle And then you can make your brush size a bit smaller. So now the bigger color areas have that lighting feeling already. I always work like this. I always handle the larger shapes first and get those color transitions in because it instantly boosts the overall finished look of the illustration. Then we will move on to smaller areas, for example, the little fog and the green strawberry leaves, and add the same kind of subtle color shifts there too. I'm gonna go ahead to this layer. It's just adding this bright green color. So the brush size needs to go a bit smaller because this is a smaller area. This is actually a darker color, so I'm just gonna add the darker color to the area that are closer to the strawberry. If you don't find it dark enough, just go ahead to adjust the brightness slider a bit towards the black. And then sample the color in the middle. Like that. And then to this layer, what I did in the original illustration is just I added this darker color in over here. Right? Just like that. That's it. And then for the fog, again is the dark color over here. And then there's those yellowish, like bluish color on the top. So let's just continue to add that in. Okay, right, just like that, step 3 is done. This is where we used that light and shadow idea to create those color variations. Next, we are moving into the final step, adding the darker values. Basically, the deepest shadows and the details that make everything pop. So to do the last step, we are going to create a new layer and we are going to set these layers blend mode to multiply, and then we are going to switch our brush. Again, I like to use my color pencil brush. Again, if you don't have my brush set, go ahead to use the 6B pencil brush. Let's move our reference to the final step. So because this layer is set to multiply, any color you paint here will automatically look darker on top of what's underneath. As you see, that means our color picking is really simple on this multiply layer. Whatever area you are shading, just sample the color from that same area. For example, let's start with the little lines and dots on the blue part of the cake. Since we are working on the blue area, we're going to just sample the blue and paint with it on this multiply layer. So I see here's a straight line. Okay, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the dots. Next, let's add the little dots on the strawberry. Same idea, since we are shading the strawberry, we will just sample the strawberry red from the canvas and paint the dots with this color. Okay. Alright, let's just continue to look at my original and follow where I've darkened the colors. And then we will just do the same on this new drawing. So for example, here as well. Pay attention that I actually have my opacity set to 50%. If you don't think this color is like dark enough, you can just increase your opacity. And then over here, I'm just gonna sample this blue color. A quick little break, but also something I really want to say. When you are following my tutorials, please don't put too much pressure on yourself. The whole point of my tutorials is for you to draw with me, enjoying the process, and finish small pieces that give you that little feeling of accomplishment. And hopefully you will come back tomorrow and draw another one. That's how your skills grow, one drawing at a time with more practice. If you want to unlock more of my drawing tutorials, you can check out my tutorial bundles through the link in the description. I will also be adding more exclusive tutorials in the future, so you will have lots of cute projects to draw along with. And if you want more structure and feedback and a teacher telling you exactly what to improve, take a look at my membership. Alright, back to drawing. Let's finish up the last step. We will continue to darken the colors and start adding in small details. Here I feel like my color is a bit too dull if you compare with my original ones. It feels like the darkening makes my drawing look kind of gray. So the easiest fix, just go ahead to the color panel and move the saturation slider, the one in the middle here. Just move it up a little, so the shadow color stays richer instead of muddy. Let's just paint with this new color. You see the color immediately gets more saturated. And then the blue cake over here, a bit darker. Here as well. And over here. And then for this line, sort of at the end is a bit darker, and also where it's closer to the fork is a bit darker. And then we're going to add like a slightly brighter gray. You can just lower the opacity over here. By the way, when you are drawing, I really want you to think about why I'm adding dark colors in certain places. Don't just copy it for the sake of copying. Pause for a second and ask, what is this dark area trying to show? For example, right here, these darker lines are basically hinting that the fork has thickness, and the moment you add that thickness, the fork instantly feels more 3D. That's the logic. Dark accents aren't random, they are there to explain the form. And for the fork handle, I added those pink stripes. So how do we draw that? Let me show you real quick. I'm just gonna find this layer and then create a new layer. And we're going to set this layer to clipping mask. And then go ahead to sample the pink color. That way, anything we paint on this clipping mask layer will stay inside the shape of the fork handle underneath. It won't spill outside the edges. So it becomes really easy to add the pink stripe pattern quickly and neatly. Alright, and that's it. Our little strawberry cake illustration is finished. I really hope you draw along with me, and if you do, don't forget to share your drawing process on Instagram and tag me. I'd love to see it. And if you want to keep drawing with me, I recommend you watch this tutorial next.